What's up guys, MikeCoco back here, bringing you guys a new video on the new costumes of the month for February. This month we have 3 new costumes, none of which are mythic, surprisingly. Partly because last month's costumes were supposed to be merged with this month's because there's too many, there's like 5 in total. But we complete the trend with the rest of the school costumes for Christine, Drake, and Jonette. So I'm going to go through each of these and talk a little bit about the changed skills. So Christine gets a change exposed weakness. Now, on first look, it doesn't look like much has been changed. It still exposes a weakness for one turn. Here, it's still an exposed weakness. The difference is that rather than having an exposed weakness for a single hit, the costume Christine now exposes the weakness for one complete turn. And what this means is that typically when you use Christine without her costume, as soon as you get the exposed weakness debuff, when you see it on the icon under the boss, once you hit, the exposed weakness debuff is gone. The critical damage is dealt and the debuff is gone. Now with her costume, it is an exposed weakness for one complete turn. So this means that every single hit you do, it will be a critical hit, and every hit will not remove the exposed weakness debuff until your turn is over. So this is actually really huge for Mythic Raid because it means that every single one of your heroes can crit without any critical buffs whatsoever, as long as Christine uses her skill first. So obviously this is extremely good for Mythic Raid because you have so many heroes in Mythic Raid, and it also means that you can rely on fewer critical buffers and spend less time moving them around and focus more on attack buffers. So as a result, in Mythic Raid, she's really good. There's pretty much no reason not to use her unless you have a lot of heroes that already provide crit buff for whatever reason. And even then, I would suggest even try taking out one of those crit buffers for Christine, because that means that you can add in another attack buffer. So Christine is really good for Mythic Raid. Now she can also be useful for Explore, but in Explore you're kind of limited to your formation. Personally, I can't fit her into my formation because of skill versatility. But if you have heroes that have all-in-one skills like Remy with costume, you can definitely go ahead and take out some people and put in Christine, because it does mean that you no longer have to rely on critical buffers to be in the vicinity of your damage dealers, so they won't have to be exposed to the enemy's attacks. For example, if you want, let's say, Lacita to always crit, you have to put Pram beside Lacita, and it kind of makes both of them vulnerable. While with Christine, you don't have to put them near each other. You can just set Christine's initiative higher, and it'll guarantee that Lacita will always crit, because as long as Lacita goes after Christine, it'll be fine. Now, the only problem, and it's not really a problem, it's more like how the skill is built, it requires Christine to use her skill every turn, and this means that you could potentially run into Fury problems, especially in Explore, which is another reason why I hesitate to say that she is very good for Explore, because with your typical crit buffers like Pram, and I think Neff as well, they're 2-turn buffers, so you can buff on the first turn, and if you run out of Fury, that's fine. You can still wait until the next turn to crit buff again. But you can't do that with Christine. You have to have her skill set to always use, otherwise she doesn't crit. So that's pretty much the only problem I see with Christine. And in PvP, I would say she is okay. Having the ability to crit a specific target for an entire turn is good, but it's kind of difficult to focus all your heroes on one target anyway, and it's not really magic damage unless you have a bunch of magic damage users along with Christine in that team. So in PvP, she's just okay. In PvE is where she truly shines. So if you're focusing on PvE, I would definitely go with Christine for this month. Now, I do want to mention really quickly that both Drake and Christine have terrible mythic skills. I think they have like EXP up and like gold up during battle or something like that, which is absolutely useless. So do keep that in mind. Their mythic skills are really bad. So Next up we have Drake. Now Drake's in a little bit of a rough spot because he ultimately becomes similar to Lacita, almost an exact carbon copy of Lacita. A 75% attack up and a stun for 2 turns and reduces defense, which is exactly the same as Lacita. But her or his mythic skill sucks a lot more compared to Lacita's. Lacita has a boss damage up, which means that she's very good for PvE, and Drake doesn't have that. And Lacita is not that great for PvP. She does have a really strong attack buff, but it's not magic damage. In PvP, magic damage is what shines. Lacita is actually not that great for PvP, and if Drake has the exact same functionality as Lacita, he's also not that great at PvP. The only thing that he's good for is 2-turn stun, which is nothing to laugh at, but it's still only a 2-turn stun, and that's all he can provide. Likewise, he's not Lacita either because he doesn't have a good mythic skill, so he can't, go all ham on PvE bosses because, it doesn't have increased boss damage or increased melee buff or whatever. He doesn't shine in either PvP, nor does he shine in PvE, so he's in a really rough situation. Now, despite that, he does get a 20% increase to attack, and it might help alleviate his poor mythic skill because Drake at EX actually has very similar stats to Prince Arthur at EX, and that we're comparing a Season 3 to Season 7, and this is without any costume buffs. So a 20% attack buff, it can be considered useful. It can help alleviate the fact that he doesn't have boss damage, but I don't think Drake is too useful for either one of those, so he's in a rough situation, and I would only choose him if you're not going with Christine, because Jonette's skill is simply not good for today's meta. I've mentioned before that in the Explore video at least, the current meta relies on pure damage. You can't expect to out tank the boss because that simply won't happen. You can use like drawing aggro strategies, but that's not really, in my opinion, it's not really stalling because you're still dealing damage. It's just the fact that you're drawing aggro away from your heavy damage dealers. So with Jonette's skill, her skill changes to a reduction in damage to all your sword heroes by 20% for 2 turns. And 20% is not a lot. It's not gonna allow you to survive one more round in Explore, nor will it allow you to survive one more round in Mythic Raid. And it's only for sword heroes, and that's a big problem because if you're running melee heroes, you're typically not gonna run completely all sword heroes. There are a lot of good spear heroes, a lot of good axe heroes, and if you're focusing only on sword heroes, you're kind of limiting your versatility. The ones I can think of right now are Lucas and Zhao Yun. They're extremely good. So that's my problem with Jeanette. The skill is just not focused for today's meta. Now, you could say the same about attack reduction, and you could be right, but some skills already provide attack reduction as part of like a secondary trait to their skill, not as a main trait to their skill. So in my opinion, Jonette is simply too far behind in today's meta. If it were, I don't know, a year ago where damage didn't really matter too much, defense mattered a little bit more, she could be useful, but it's just not useful anymore in today's game. So I would not suggest Jonette if you're going with the costumes. So ultimately, I would rank them in terms of Chris, Drake, and then Jonette, in that order. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this month's costume, guys. Peace.